Thank you very much and welcome. Thanks, Penny. You won't believe me when I tell you that this is the first time I've actually seen Penny sing serious music. And I hate to use that word serious because it's a word that I've never really been able to put together with Penny. And I was really touched when a week ago I got home from a wonderful trip in Europe, and I walked in and there was a fax saying Penny would like you to launch her book. And I thought, firstly, I was very complimented and very touched, and as I say, but secondly, I was actually amazed that someone who knows that someone would ask me, a person who has so much dirt on Penny Flanagan, she'd be brave enough to ask me to launch her book. And so I thought, well, before I start digging up dirt, I have to have a read of the book. And I can't speak highly enough of it. I've admired Penny for many years, but as I say, I've never been associated with Penny in a serious musical way. I first met Penny when she was recording, I think, an album with Club Hoy at Paradise Studios, and I was recording a jazz sort of retro album with a bunch of grumpy old men. And I remember sitting in that studio and thinking, this skinny little person has such an incredible self-confidence and a great ability to just express herself. It's like this voice was coming out from, right down from the bottom of her boots. And I remember thinking back then, what am I doing here? I'm about to record a bunch of old music. And I remember feeling very confused and thinking, am I doing a disservice to myself? Here's someone so original, and I remember thinking, this person's going to go an incredibly long way. And over the years, we sort of ran in similar paths, we did similar gigs, but it wasn't until I was needing to replace an actress in my children's show, and my manager kindly said, get Penny, she'll do anything for a buck. I thought, well, does she know what the job description is? And he said, I'll tell her, she'll be right. Lo and behold, she accepted to be my 6-foot gorilla, my 3-foot loudmouth macaw, and the role which I really admired, which was my favourite on stage, was a character that I had written when I was 4, Mrs. George Davino. Now, the first performance I have, and I suppose you assume musicians, actress, you think, oh yeah, she's done everything, she'll be able to cope. I remember we rocked up to a horrible little club in Canberra, and we did the nasty 2-hour setup, and all along I'm saying, now if you remember to do this, and if you don't, and I kept trying to go through the show. We hadn't had a good rehearsal, but I said, look, just wing it. And you can take the script under the table. He's a puppet, no one will know. And just read it, you'll be fine. When you get to Mrs. George Davino, all the costumes are laid out. Now she's kind of a combination of, it's sort of, Doris Day meets Nana Muscuri with a bit of ecstasy on the side. Yeah, I'll be fine. We went out, and I just remember that first opening scene where I started talking to McCaw and realised that none of the answers I was getting back were those that were scripted. It was that point I looked down under the table, and she's there sort of having a ball with the bird. Of course, the bird's mouth is not moving. But she is under the table having a hoot, and I realised the script had been left in the dressing room. Much to my horror, I sort of put off getting to the Mrs. George Davino part of the show, thinking maybe we could avoid it altogether, but she popped up in that hot pink caftan, and I'll never forget, she'd managed to get one of the props, which was one of those slinkies. I don't know if you know of them, but anyone with children here, they're the kind of things that can tangle very easily, but they just pop off, those things that roll downstairs. She had it in her hair with a bunch of flowers poking over the top. It was the most imaginative George Davino, and for me it was the perfect characterization of this character I'd imagined all my life. Here she was, perfect. And it was kind of Dame Edna Everage meets I don't know, Olivia Dukakis kind of. It was the most bizarre thing. Now, what made this more bizarre, that, we could do children's concerts every day of the year, but this was the one and only concert that a reviewer had to attend. It's never happened to me since, and for some reason it happened that day. And I'll never forget sitting down with that reviewer for 2 hours as he said the craziest things to me, and basically wanted to know what methodology we used, and were we au fait with the théâtre de absurde. I tried to sound interesting, I tried to sound original, but you know, I couldn't explain. I just said, well, it's one of those things, you know, yeah, we worked on it for hours and then, you know. But so, as I say, she's an amazing person, and it's great to hear her singing because it's a totally different side of Penny. I find it very hard to go and watch her in concert, although I'm a great fan of her recordings, and in fact it's one of the ones Bravado is one of my favourite albums, which we've listened to on many dry road out to Kalgoorlie. And I've always respected Penny as a writer, but most of all as a musician. And it was great to read Sing to Me and to all of a sudden extend the awards and the acclamations. She's not only a great performer, she's not only a terrific musician, I was going to say musician, but she truly is a great writer, and I know you'll all enjoy it. She has a great way of describing a person and describing characters, and in fact, if you have musician friends and you have no idea what to give them as a present, Sing to Me comes highly recommended, because every character I've ever known is in this book. Every tour that I've ever been on with drunken, hideous musicians is in this book. Every beautiful side of a musician, every charming, every untouchable side is in this book. It made me want to be a mother, which was a really, really touching part of the book. Reading a description of a musician mother, or a musician parents, but in particular a mother, and the way that she softly described children. I wondered if she'd drawn on touring with Atticus, my son, who she's also responsible for getting him drunk for the first time in his life. He is only 3, but again, I think a horrible Canberra hotel room. We were sitting, knocking back the white wines, and we realised that Atticus seems a little bit more joyous than ever. And we realised that Penny was very kindly letting him dunk his dummy into her wine glass. But at the end of the night, we all made about as much sense as each other. But I can see these observations, and funnily enough, I read this, I find parts of myself in there, and I think, that's a bit close to the bone. I wonder if it's slightly autobiographical. It's something I hope that we'll have many glasses of white wine and discuss one day. But I know you'll enjoy Sing to Me, and it's with great pleasure that I introduce it to you and launch it for Penny, Miss Flanagan.
That's great. I didn't have any speeches at my 21st, and now I feel like Monica's made up for it. There's nothing I love more than being the butt of jokes, and I do mean that sincerely. I have to say, my time with Monica in the children's show was like being part of a circus, and I just loved it. Everyone thought I was a little bit strange. The strangest thing was my mother wasn't ashamed of me. She was proud of me. I was the gorilla in Monica's kids show, and she wasn't horrified, she was proud. So today I wanted to thank a few people, and I especially wanted to thank my parents for never telling me to get a real job, and for actually being horrified if I ever suggested that I get a real job. Especially my father, who always showed me that a job didn't necessarily mean putting on a suit and going to an office that you hated. It actually meant putting on your Jimmy Jams, staying in your Jimmy Jams in the morning, getting your cup of coffee and walking downstairs to your study and just writing, and always doing what you love doing instead of torturing yourself over something else. I also wanted to thank Jeff Higgins, who was the man who approached me at a gig one day when I'd actually decided that books were too hard, and because I'd already written one teen fiction, and I get nothing back from them. They just sit on the shelves. I'm not going to write another book. He approached me at a gig and said, "We were wondering if you maybe had a book in you." And I thought, oh God, sure, as if this man's from Penguin. I thought it was a bit of a hoax. You've no idea the weirdos who come up to me after gigs. I'm a magnet. So I kind of took his card with trepidation and thought, oh, is this for real? And then got a call from Claire Foster at Penguin. And I'm so used to the music industry where people say, okay, let's have a meeting, and it actually means nothing. You go there and you talk about what you're going to do, but nothing happens. So she suggested a meeting, and I thought, oh, here we go, geez, I hate meetings. And I said, no, look, I'll send you something I've written, and if you like it, we'll meet, because I didn't want to be a dilettante. So I sent her something, and she gave me encouragement. She rang me back and said, yep, I loved them, come in and we'll talk about it. And she gave me a lot of feedback about the story that I'd written and gave me a lot of ideas of how we could expand it, and said, keep going, and whenever you need feedback, just call me, which was just so invaluable, because one of the reasons I didn't want to write a book was I thought, it's just too hard, it's too solitary, you never know what people are thinking about it. And so it ended up being a book. And I had a great time writing it last year, and I've had a great time over the last few weeks seeing it in the front of bookshops, which is what I've always wanted. And the best moment was walking down the road to this little bookshop in Coogee that never has really the books that I think it should have. And I assumed it wouldn't have mine, and it was in the window. I very nearly wept. I was like, oh, because they'd already sent me my 10 books and my 2 tons of prawn chips that they send along with the books that are still all over my house. And when I got the book, I thought, oh, it's just the same as the last book, it's not going to mean anything. And then I just went to bookshops and they were everywhere, so I'd really like to thank Penguin for getting behind me and really giving me such a push. And that's about all today. Thank you. Thanks for coming.